Football 24/7 with John McMullen across the JAKIB Media Sports Radio or Sports Network. John, these are going to become fast and furious as it is officially underway. You referred to it as the circus. It's just getting started, but we do have breaking news. You see it on the screen. The Eagles finally signed their second-round draft pick, Landon Dickerson, taken number 37 in this past season's draft. Pick it up from there. The structure of the deal, the math behind the deal, and all of the numbers, John.
Well, we already knew what the deal was going to be. And I'm so glad this is the last time I have to talk about Landon Dickerson's contract. It's a 4-year deal. Everything is slotted in the current NFL with the CBA and rookie contracts. So it's a 4-year deal, right about $8.7 million is what Landon is going to get over those 4 years. His signing bonus, a little bit under $3.7 million. And the most important number for the salary cap in 2021 is going to be right around $1.6 million, a little bit less, but right around $1.6 million. All these numbers were already known, Joe. So, you know, the question with Landon Dickerson, when you have these rookie contracts that take a little bit longer, it's generally about two things. It's about either offset language in the contract. In other words, that the Eagles have to cut him down the road and he signs with another team. The money they sign him for, the Eagles will sort of get back. That's one thing. The second part is the bonus payment structure. Sometimes agents and teams can argue over that. Took a little bit longer with Landon Dickerson. I'm just speculating it might have to do with his injury history because he had two torn ACLs in college. He had 2 ankle surgeries in college. So the Eagles might have been a bit more heavy-handed with that offset language, and that's just speculation. But he was always going to be here. I've said this on Birds 365 with Jody McDonald. He was going to be there Wednesday morning. He's going to be there Wednesday morning.
John, excuse the ignorance of the question. If all of this is a formality, meaning these contracts, which are negotiated and signed off on by the union and the National Football League, usually when that scenario occurs and a union contract is in place, there is no gray area. Everything is defined. And if that's the case, the formality of all 9 picks being signed, you would think would be signed rather quickly.
Yeah, and most of them are. You see around the league, I think there were 10 unsigned draft picks at the start of this week in the entire league. So the vast majority were inked up. There's a lot of reasons. As I said, usually it's those two things: language in the contract, offset language, or bonus payment structure. That's the only wiggle room. And I've always compared it, Joe, to like a married couple that doesn't like each other. When you see these things take longer, they don't have anything to argue about, but they create things to argue about. In the case of Landon, again, I'm gonna speculate only here. I think it's probably got to do with the offset language because of his injury history, but that's just speculation. But either way, he was going to be here. He can't go anywhere else. He can't play. He can go play in Canada if he wants to play it for a lot less money. But he was always going to be with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he's signed. He's inked up. The entire draft class is locked up by the Eagles. And it was always going to be that way. It just took a little bit longer with Landon Dickerson.
John, does Landon report to camp healthy?
No, he's not healthy. He remember, Krause, he tore his ACL in December. So it's generally a 9-month injury. It's interesting because I was able to talk with Dr. Jessica Flynn on Birds 365 about Landon, and she said, he's 6'6", he's 330 pounds. You want to be cautious with those guys. So generally, you're talking about a 9-month injury. So you can do the math. December to September is about 9 months. So you're right on the cusp. What I can tell you, Joe, is the Eagles are on record as saying they don't expect 2021 to be a redshirt season. He's going to be available to play, but I do think they're going to be cautious. I don't think he's going to be cleared for contact at the beginning of camp. I think they're going to be very, very cautious with him.
What does Landon Dickerson do, John? Does he take reps? Does he stand on the sideline? Does he educate himself on the iPad and observe for the first week or the first few weeks? What does that look like?
Well, he was already doing some light work at the off-season stuff during the OTAs. So he's feeling good. He feels fine. But as Dr. Flynn said, you got to let that graft heal. Because if that graft is not completely healed, you can feel fine as a patient. But if that thing is not completely healed, and that's about time more than anything else, especially with somebody his size again. So that's number one. But he feels good. He'll do some things. He'll do some individual work. I don't expect him in teamwork again until late in training camp at the earliest. If he's beating that deadline, so to speak, I don't even know if I'd like that, to be honest, because that tells me the Eagles are pushing things, and I don't think there's any need to push things because remember, Krause, the Eagles are good in the interior of the offensive line. You have Isaac Seumalo at left guard, Jason Kelce at center, Brandon Brooks at right guard. Landon Dickerson is here to take over in 2022. So you have plenty of time to get him completely healthy. I don't think there's any need to push him.
I know, John, that over the last few seasons, we've watched this offensive line and we've watched the line be plagued by injuries. We've watched the puzzle being put together, I want to say almost on a weekly basis, although that might not be accurate. Do you foresee a time post-September when Landon Dickerson is now in the puzzle rotation, or will he be held back?
I think he'll be held back other than injury. I mean, if one of those interior guys gets hurt, and that's the beautiful thing about Landon Dickerson, he's got tremendous versatility, so he can play center. He was the best center in the country at Alabama last season. He won the Remington Trophy, but he's played guard before he became a center, so he can play any of the interior line positions. So you have tremendous depth. When Landon is ready to go, I expect him to be the top backup at all three of those interior line positions. And that's pretty good, man. I mean, this team has impressive depth. But you brought up, you're right, the Eagles set a record last year, Krause, for different offensive line groups. I forget, it was 13 or 14 off the top of my head. I forget which one. There's only 16 games. Well, now there's 17. They had 13 or 14 different groups over 16 games. You got to think you have better luck this year at the bare minimum. It sort of regresses back to the mean. So if they don't, though, if they have the same injury problem, they have a lot of depth. And it's not only Landon Dickerson, it's Nate Herbig, it's Jack Driscoll, it's players like that. So that was one of the silver linings to all the injuries last year on the offensive line.
Football 24/7 with John McMullen across the JAKIB Media Network. Again, the Eagles finally do sign Landon Dickerson. John talked about it with our breaking news story yesterday. He mentioned it again this morning on Birds 365. Now all draft picks are officially reporting tomorrow. The first day, Wednesday, is the first day that they will take the field. I've got to ask you, John, sidebar question, maybe no relevance at all, but all of a sudden, Roll Tide is running around the NovaCare complex inside that locker room a little bit. And even though Jalen finished his collegiate career not at Alabama, to me, I still equate his career to being at Alabama. And I wonder if there's any dynamic now with his top gun, top receiver, and eventually Landon Dickerson replacing Kelsey under the net. What your thoughts are on that?
Well, Alabama's been dominating college football. It's been a long time since the Eagles dipped into the Alabama well, so to speak, and they did it twice in the first round, as you mentioned, with Devontae Smith, in the second round with Landon Dickerson. How we joked about it because he's a University of Florida guy. His wife is an Alabama gal, so to speak. So she finally won out. This is the whole league, though. Everybody's got Alabama guys. They're that good. I think it just happened to shake out that way. It wasn't they were looking, oh, we have to draft somebody from the Crimson Tide, but they felt like they got the best receiver in the draft, and they felt like in the second round, even though it's not going to be an immediate contribution, if Landon Dickerson doesn't tear his ACL, he's probably a top 25 pick, I would say. He's in the first round. He's probably going in the early 20s. So the Eagles saw value there and leaped. And maybe it was a bit of a luxury pick for a team coming off a 4-win season. But come 2022, people are going to be really happy, I think, to have Landon Dickerson.
One last question on Landon Dickerson, and then we'll close it up for this afternoon on Football 24/7 across the JAKIB Media Network here on YouTube. Johnny, the history, that injury history of Landon Dickerson, what does it look like on the timeline? So if you're looking at a timeline that goes back sequentially in 4 years, what does it look like? Injury every season? Well, how does that space itself out?
Yeah, remember, he started at Florida State, so he had his first ACL tear at Florida State. The good news is he tore both ACLs, if that's good news. In other words, he didn't tear the same ACL twice, which would make it a little bit worse moving forward. Dr. Flynn, I brought up before, she said, your biggest concern with ACL tears, especially with bigger people, is arthritis. Everybody gets arthritis when they have an ACL tear. So when is that going to kick in? That's your biggest concern from a medical standpoint. He also had a serious ankle sprain and then a tightrope surgery, which was the same ankle surgery Lane Johnson had in August at the beginning of the season. He was trying to get through the season. Didn't work out for Lane Johnson. But Landon Dickerson's a number of years off that surgery. I'll tell you what, he looks great. He moves great. He's doing backflips. The Eagles have told him to slow down on that. He's a very young guy, but you do have to be realistic, and there's a low concern with the injury history, no question about it.
All right. Good stuff. Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen, of course, co-host of Birds 365. He'll be right back here on the YouTube channel tomorrow morning. He might be back tonight. You might see him on the National Football Show with Dan Sileo, because remember, John, and we'll say goodbye on this, the Deshaun Watson conversation is still out there. So we'll wait to see how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll wait to see how it looks like. Aaron Rodgers is getting cleared up. He's gonna run it back one more time, it looks like, in Green Bay, but we still have the Deshaun Watson domino to fall, and the Eagles figure to be involved in that. So we'll see. Timing is the big aspect of that. It's getting crazy, Krause.
Keep it right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Don't forget, we're giving away a pair of season tickets, 2 season tickets. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. On behalf of John McMullen of Football 24/7, see you next time.